little bit of inside for you all to kind of know is when I prepare these each week. I share these with Dr. Rod. Some weeks I'm like, I don't quite have enough stories. You have something to share, an article that you might have seen, he might contribute. And this week when I put them together, I was looking through the remaining stories because we're working through all of the stories from Luke, not chronologically, but picking out ones that are relevant for the topics. And I was reading through the ones we've got left, and I was like, that one, I think, really goes with today's topic, but it was really late at night. Well, actually, really early in the morning. It's probably about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning at that stage. And I was like, let me send this through to Dr. Rod. Dr. Rod, you just tell me if you think you can come up with one. And then I went to sleep, woke up in the morning. He sent me a text. He said, you should look at Luke 6, 31, and that passage. I'm like, you know what? That was the passage that I was also looking at that I thought, that does it suit? It does. Maybe I'm just trying to force it because I'm tired and just trying to find one that fits. But it does. The heading from verse 27 through to 36 is love for enemies. We're talking about making decisions. We're talking about making decisions as business owners, as leaders, as ministry leaders, as political leaders, leaders in entertainment, wherever you are. You have to make tough decisions as a leader. That's what sets us apart. We've spoken about a whole bunch of different things, but it does really come down to verse 31, to kind of sum it all up. Do to others as you would have them do to yourself. Or in 27, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. I suppose that could be, if we're kind of to sum up today's topic, is if you got some tough decisions to make, just remember to love people. You won't make I don't think you can make a wrong decision if you keep that at the forefront. Would you agree with that, Dr. Rod?
I think I would. That, just as Jesus did, he put the interests of others before himself. Of course, he did that in a big way at the cross. There is one caveat, though, and I'm talking here in the context of organisations like
Yes.
for-profit businesses or not-for-profits. God will give a business or an organisation a purpose.
Yes.
And you've also got to bear in mind that you don't want to undermine that purpose.
Yes.
So you might think that when we say, do to others as you would have them do to yourself, that if you're in business, you're going through a tough time, you shouldn't make anybody redundant. Now, I think that's a wrong way of understanding that, because if you postpone redundancies, there's a risk that you will actually go broke yourself, right? Because you're still paying out costs. Then that in turn undermines the purpose for which God established your business or not-for-profit organisation or whatever it was. So when that passage says, do to others as you would have them do to yourself, if you're in a position where you have to make some people redundant or where you have to let some people go for other reasons, think about what is the Christian way of letting people go.
Yeah, that's good.
When I used to teach human resources management, we used to go through the 5 different ways of separation from a business and ask the question, well, what's the Christian way of dealing with this? So sometimes it can be, connecting them with other opportunities. Sometimes it can be continuing to pay them for a period as long as that doesn't do too much damage to the business. So you just have to apply that scripture with great wisdom.
Yes.
You see, and don't think you're God in the context of business. It's God who takes responsibility for providing for people. You're not God. It's not actually your responsibility to make sure that all your people have a job forever. But if you do have to let people go, there are good ways of doing it and there are bad ways of doing it. And I think we can use biblical wisdom in terms of how we go about releasing people from our business if we have to make them redundant. But when you sent me that message and said you hadn't sort of settled on a scripture from Luke, that immediately jumped to mind, I must admit, because I had only just come from watching some podcasts, or that would have been video podcasts, on the announcement that the Commonwealth Games was not going to go ahead. And I was just thinking, in terms of the Premier, well, how would you like to be treated as a citizen of one of those regional towns who voted for you in the expectation that you were going to have the games in 2026 and a brand new stadium built or whatever?
And new transport and trains and buses coming out to you, and
So that was why it jumped to mind. But look, it really, the way we treat other people really matters to God. And I'll tell you why it matters to God. Because every single person was created by God and is loved by God, and therefore they have value. And we must never, ever forget that. Even the most unlovable person is loved by God.
Yes.
And I think that's the import of that scripture. But sometimes we do have to make pretty tough decisions. And we have to work out, well, what is the biblical way of dealing with the person in those circumstances? And I think it's good to use our scripture, do to others as you would have them do to you. So if I was going to be the recipient of some bad news, how would I want to be dealt with? Given that not giving the bad news is just not an option.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that there's another part of this is like going on to verse 32, where it goes on to say, well, if you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? And it goes on to, like the even sinners do that, and well, if you favor the people that if you favor the people that can give back to you or repay you and stuff like that and do benefit to you, like obviously like that's kind of like a no-brainer. And it does kind of remind me of that the Commonwealth Games story of with you talking about, well, Daniel Andrews, how he's making all these decisions, and it seems like these leaders are all making these decisions with their circles of people who can all benefit, and they're all kind of like they're in cahoots and they're colluding, and there's all these negotiations, everything to try to make it all better for us, but not, it's like, obviously you doing the benefit for you and the people that can repay you, but what about the other people who can't? The only way, obviously, like in that story, the only other people can repay him is votes, which is actually probably a good payment, but I think we tend to forget that. We kind of get caught up in what benefit can I get from this situation, and how can, I'll help those who can benefit me, but that's not biblical leadership. That's not how God's called us to make those tough decisions according to the Bible. He says, make sure you love your enemies. Make sure you do unto others as they would do to you. And like Dr. Rod said, it doesn't mean we don't make the tough decision. It doesn't mean we just then become a charity if that's not what God has called us to. Our purpose is to run a profitable business, is to run a ministry, run a in politics, or whatever it is that you're called to do in your leadership. You're called to drive towards a particular outcome, not to screw everyone along the way, but to make sure everyone's still loved and appreciated. And we do have to make those tough decisions. But when we make those tough decisions, let's just make sure we do it with love, and we treat those people in a way that we would consider to be treated ourselves. So, hey, you've just watched an excerpt from the On the Cube Leadership podcast. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. If it challenged your leadership or inspired you in some way, put a comment below. And if you want to watch the full episode or more content like this, check out our channel, and hey, consider subscribing while you're there.